Monday, March 8th, 2021. It is 5:15 and the Carroll City Council meeting shall now commence. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Please note everyone is in attendance. Our first item this evening is under the consent agenda, which is approval of the minutes of the February 22nd meeting. I should scoot over here. Approval of bills and claims. Under licenses and permits, we have the renewal of a Class C liquor license with Brew Pub, Outdoor Service and Sunday Sales, Carroll Brewing Company. And we have the renewal of a Class E liquor license with Class B wine permit. Carryout wine includes native wine, and Class C beer permit, carryout beer and Sunday sales. Casey's General Store number 3082. And with that, is there any discussion on the consent agenda?
I would move to approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion.
Second.
And a second. There's no other discussion. We'll go ahead and vote, please.
Dirks?
Yes.
Seaman? Yes. Haley?
Yes.
Bushner?
Yes.
Katz?
Yes.
Base? Yes. Motion is approved.
Thank you. The next item is under our oral requests and communications from the audience. If there is any communication from people online, you'll have to unmute your mic now at this time and go ahead and speak, please.
And I would note if you're on by phone, you will need to press *6 to unmute yourself. We cannot unmute you.
Hi, this is Daryl and Joy Pinners, and we are present to discuss the Northeast Park. That's on the agenda.
Yeah, we can do that at the time when the agenda, when that comes up on the item, if you want to, Joyce.
Thank you.
I know there's some other callers. Again, you'll need to hit *6 to unmute yourself if you're calling into the council.
Not seeing any other oral requests at this time. That brings up our next item, which is the ordinances, and it's the Carroll City Ordinance, Chapter 43, Drug Paraphernalia Edition, third reading. And Brad, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the third reading, of course. No changes, and as of right now, I have not had any feedback since the last council meeting. So with that, my recommendation would be to adopt the ordinance, Chapter 43, Drug Paraphernalia to the City of Carroll Code of Ordinances.
Any discussion from the council? If not, I will look for a motion to let the third reading of Chapter 43, Drug Paraphernalia to the City of Carroll Code of Ordinances.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. If there's no other discussion, we'll go ahead and vote, please.
Haley?
Yes.
Dirks?
Yes.
Base? Yes. Katz?
Yes.
Bushner?
Yes.
Seaman? Motion is approved.
And then I need a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Did you get that?
Yes.
Okay. If there's no other discussion, we'll go ahead and vote to adopt the ordinance, please.
Seaman? Yes. Dirks?
Yes.
Katz?
Yes.
Haley?
Yes.
Base? Yes. Bushner?
Yes.
Ordinance is adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. With that, that brings us to resolutions. And the first item is the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget. And it is 5:19, and we'll open the public hearing. And with that, go ahead, Laura. You ready?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the time for the public hearing on our fiscal '22 budget. The notice of the public hearing was published in the Carroll Times Herald on Friday, February 26th, which is within the requirements of the state code. A copy of the detailed budget that will get filed with the state of Iowa and with the county auditor's office is attached for your review. It basically took our binder of information that we discussed at our council planning session, or excuse me, at our budget workshop sessions and condensed it down into these forms that'll get filed. But this is the time for anybody to ask any questions, or I guess I would note that the tax rate would be 11.65008, which is, about 5 cents higher than it was last year. Are there any questions on the budget?
At this time, if there's anybody in the public that is online, would like to discuss the budget, this is the time to do it. You may have to unmute your mic or press *6, correct? Not hearing anything at this time. Any questions from the council in this open session? If not, it is 5:21 and we'll close the public hearing. With that, I will need a motion to approve the resolution adopting the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. There's no other discussion. We'll go ahead and vote, please.
Base? Yes. Dirk?
Yes.
Haley?
Yes.
Cox?
Yes.
Seaman? Yes. Fleischner?
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
Thank you. The next item under resolutions is the professional services agreement with Northeast Park and the Parking and Sidewalk Improvements Project 2021. And I think Daryl and Joyce are online. And go ahead, Jack, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight you have the memorandum that kind of reviews what has happened last year with the Miracle Field baseball field being designed, put in place, but now the next steps for them would be to add the dugouts, put up the fencing and everything that they need to have baseball games at the facility. Their goal is to continue with what they've started, what they built so far. They'd like to add ADA restrooms, concessions, a covered area with picnic tables and chairs by late summer, early fall and this is aggressive schedule with games this fall. If things get held up and things change, they'll look for next year for games too. But I think they're optimistic and hopeful that they can have some games yet this fall. Staff has met with the group and their request back to the city is to help with construction of the parking lot to sufficiently accommodate the parking for the needs for the game, as well as others using the great facility in the park. So with that, we have requested for your consideration tonight a professional service agreement with Shive Hattery. This is the firm that has helped us with our master plan, that's done a lot of the work out there with us for Northeast Park, so it makes sense to get a proposal from them. And they have provided this back to us last week, and as follows: the survey would be $2,750, preliminary design phase of $3,700, civil and site design of $13,350, and then when we do go to construction, if that is approved and the council's desire, that would be $5,000 for a total lump sum fee of $24,800. Cost estimate: Shive Hattery had developed this opinion of cost back in July of 18 at $340,000 and $340,715. And we talked about adding the 5% inflation per year for 3 years. This project now would cost, estimate again, these are all estimates, we don't know until we have bids before us, $394,420. Funding, currently there's $50,000 that's budgeted out of loss for the Miracle Field. No additional funds at this point, so there will need to be some discussion and thoughts of where to pay for this parking lot. Possible funding sources: $75,000 out of hotel motel, with the remainder possibly out of local option sales tax. So for tonight, the commitment would be from the city to enter into the agreement with Shive Hattery for design work of the parking lot at $24,800. And we did attach the proposal from them and also the map at the very end that shows the master plan that was developed. And as you can see, the field pretty close to where it's designed with this master plan. And then you have the additional concrete for the restrooms, concession stand, and then just a covered picnic area that will be used by just the general public, people using the playground there, walking on the trail. So that's just something that'll be used by more than just people there for the baseball games. And then the sufficient parking lot, as you can see, there's a drop-off area that is really needed, and I think that'd be a nice addition besides just the parking. So I would open up for any questions for us.
So Jack, I know Daryl and Joyce are online. Did meet with them yesterday and kind of looked over their property and stuff, and they seem to be the ones that are probably the biggest impacted by the parking lot. They did really stress with me that they're all for this. They think it's a wonderful program, but their concern was just the location of the parking lot according to the schematics that was given to us, and wanted to ensure that we could push that as far east as possible. So that was one of the concerns. The other one was any parking lot lighting that they would have would definitely impact the back of their home and such. And at what point do we pick what kind of lighting there would be if there is some?
That would be during the design phase of the parking lot. There, obviously, for people to get to the parking lot in those areas, there would be sufficient lighting so people can get to their cars and unlock their doors, do those different things that they need. That'll be early on in the design phase, as part of the design phase.
Are you familiar with their property?
Yes, they're on the corner, correct? Yep.
So as you are in their backyard and looking east, there's two large evergreen trees.
Okay.
And I know that was a big concern, just to give them some privacy and a little bit of buffer zone between the parking lot and such. And talking with city manager and the mayor before the meeting, it sounds like, according to this schematic, that it's already moved to the east and those two trees would be remaining.
Okay.
Is that accurate?
I know that we had discussions with Daryl, and that was our concern, was to push as far east as we can.
I'll
So
put that on the overhead.
the only one concern that possibly could be, according to this map here, is the trail. We want to put in the trail system on the east side. That might be a little bit further west, but I still don't think it impact the parking lot. So I know Mike has.
So one thing that we had talked about was, and this was a while ago, moving this drive entrance so it matched the nursing home. I know the individuals are on the call, they can't see the map, but that would move it to the east, I would say
About 30 feet maybe?
30, 40 feet. And then we talked to them about keeping those trees that are there. So the sidewalk that's there would be no drive west of that. So that would be the far extent of any parking lot would be where that current sidewalk is.
I would just open up Daryl and Joyce at this point, see if I've accurately conveyed their
Convey
concerns.
what they had. Joyce, are you still there?
And you'll need to
You'll have,
hit
yeah, go
pound
ahead.
6 to unmute the phone.
Joyce,
#6 or *6?
star
Excuse
six.
me, *6, correct.
I can't.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. Is this Joyce?
Whoever spoke last, I just wanted to confirm that, what was that? Because there was some breakup on the phone. So something about moving it, the parking lot approximately 30 feet to the east.
That'd be correct.
Okay, so that is in the plan. And those trees will stay?
That is our intention, yes.
And the parking lot would be on the other side of the sidewalk
Correct.
that leads up to the playground.
Yep, so where the, today you have the driveway it'd be to the south where the nursing home is. I know our plan shows it a little bit differently, but that was just an early preliminary plan. The plan would be we would align those two driveways, the one coming into the new parking lot we're building on the north side. So those two driveways would align. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's an improvement.
We'll try and get it as far east as we can.
Pardon?
We'll try and get, we'll relay that information to the designer of this so that we get that as far east as possible, to keep that, any extra noise and whatnot from interfering on your property.
Well, we would appreciate that. You know, we do enjoy the playground being up here, but there definitely is an increased flow of foot traffic at this point. And so, you know, just that loss of privacy has definitely been noticeable. And once the rest of it all gets developed, we anticipate it will increase even more. So we just want to make sure that there are precautions taken to at least respect, you know, our backyard privacy.
Absolutely. And if we need to put more trees up into that area to help kind of tone it down a little bit, I think we can do that too.
Okay, that would be great.
Yeah.
Put up an 8-foot fence.
What was that?
That's my husband. He said,
Oh.
put up an 8-foot fence. But we appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for your input, Joyce. Thanks, Daryl. Appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Jack, you had stated in here that you're going to probably push back some items in the park and the rec. You know, on your funding
Yeah,
to eliminate, do some pushback.
there's some things that
Is that the only one you would use, maybe like leisure service, or you're just thinking about the park and rec?
I really think if this is a desire and this is something that really needs to be done, there's really a lot of different areas where we might not buy more, we might not do different things to try to come up with the funds.
And that'd be from loss and hotel motel, Jack? Is that
General
what you're
fund
looking
too.
at? In general, that's where you're talking
Yeah,
about,
yeah.
general, okay.
You know, we've planned on purchases, but also that there's things that come up, and this is definitely a thing that we knew about, but definitely I think a little bit more aggressive schedule. Their funding came in better than anticipated, and they're at the process now of really, if you're going to have this field, you need a parking lot. And so we need to prioritize where we want to spend our money, and with your help, we can do that. And there might be some things in other areas that won't get done or won't.
Well, I'm fine with this, and I'm in favor of this, but I guess I'm confused, Jack, if we're bringing forward this professional services agreement, then are we not triggering that move forward and indicating that we will have to reshuffle the budget?
I definitely think that this is, we have this plan, we know what's coming in, and I think you definitely need to get this designed and get a true estimate, better estimate of cost. And once we have that, then we'll, sharpen our pencils and look at the dollar amounts where we need to allocate money from. And if there's other projects in other departments that maybe came in under budget, we had one coming up here. We still have some money out of the Southside Park. We're going to do the concrete work around the shelter house, and there's small dollar amounts there, but there's some money that we could put together and make an aggressive attempt at doing this.
Thank you.
Jack, I had a couple questions about the proposed parking lot. The first one would be, I'm not seeing it, but I'm assuming this would be made like one way, or would it not be a good idea to do that? And maybe Chief Burke could comment. Wouldn't you want to have your parking, if the entrance be further to the east? So that we don't run into people going into both entrances?
It's gonna be a area when there's ball games and you have 20, 30 cars coming into a street that dead ends at this point in time. Yeah, it's gonna be a challenge, but that is probably the thing you look at doing is on the east side, that'd be the entrance in, so people can pull in. If they have to pull into their passenger side to get the people out
That's what it
with
seems like
wheelchairs.
we would want to do, or someone
Yeah.
can enter on the west and try and drop off somewhere on, maybe on the wrong side of their vehicle or whatever, but
Yeah.
just something to think about. And then one other thing, I know that the only entrance into the business across the street, Swan Place, is, you're trying to line that. I understand that, but would we want to check with them and see if they ever planned on building their street out to make sure it would match where they would want to go? It's very possible because it's, I just know from experience, it's kind of hard to get in and out of their parking lot.
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if they might have in their plans to want to add an exit
Another,
on the east side of their property.
okay,
So before you do anything, you
Okay.
might want to try and make sure that we align with any future plans that they have so that the entrance to both property, or it'd be an exit.
I know what you're saying.
I think you probably would want to visit with them anywhere. Shai Pattery might want to, just to make sure we configure it
Okay.
correctly.
Okay.
Thank you.
So,
Any other questions for Jack? If not, I'll look for a motion to approve the professional services agreement with Shive Hattery for the Northeast Parking and Sidewalk Improvements Project 2021 for the total compensation fee of $24,800.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. No other discussion. We'll go ahead and vote, please.
Bates?
Yes.
Haley?
Yes.
Fleshner?
Yes.
Cox?
Yes.
Seaman? Yes. Dirk?
Yes.
Resolution is approved.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the contract for services agreement, Carroll Recreation Center Building Improvements Project 2021. And Jack, please.
thank you, Mayor. And on the line, we have both Al and Brad with RDG. And so if there's specific questions with their proposal and any information that you need from them, they are on the line and we'll introduce them appropriately if we need to. Before you tonight is a contract for services agreement and a resolution for the rec center improvement plans. 2019, 2020, we went through the master plan, updated it, and came up with really a proposal that really brings the rec center up to code, brings it up to a facility that wows people again, and it's just a great facility that will be there for many years. Out of that, the council and city staff are proposing really the areas of the third gym, the raised running track, the sauna or the locker rooms, wet classroom, a new control room desk, and possibly looking at renovating the activities room and the offices. Basically, you would flip-flop them. You've heard me over years say one of the things that concerns me is when you walk in the west side of the rec center, you're not greeted by anyone until you're middle of the building. So this way, and we get better control of the facility. I can tell you today, the control of the facility is much better since we've closed off that east entrance. And everyone has to come through the one entrance. That has helped tremendously. And I think we're getting better accuracy of how many people are into the rec center. So that's really the proposal, are those areas that RDG worked with us. We had our committee work with us, and we've brought that forward. And I guess last thing is the air handling units. We have money in the budget to do those now, but it makes sense to bring this part of this project as we move forward. If we're going to do them all at that time, I think you bring in the air handling units into this project and have it encompassed, and we'll have it all done. So we do have money set aside for that, and we did address that in the memo and explain that as we move forward. With the contract, the preliminary schedule that we have worked out with RDG basically is the schematic drawing starting once this contract is approved, if that is the wish of the council, with end of construction April 2023. So you're looking at a little over a 2-year from start to finish. A lot of work in between. Cost of the work: construction $2.6 million, survey, all the other different things that go with these projects. We get a total construction cost of $7.3 million for that. But going back to just the fee proposal, lump sum fee of $456,000 to get us to the construction and get us to our ultimate goal, which hopefully is to update the rec center with all those amenities we have talked about. So $456,405 plus the small reimbursable expenses, printing, mailing, those different things. In addition, the fee is to replace the 4 AH units for the lump sum fee of $19,900. Sound system in the locker rooms and the gym, I tell you, the one we have right now it's a struggle. Sometimes it works good, and other times you can't hear when we're calling names and requesting people to come to the desk. Next would be add fire protection, sprinkler systems, and go through the code requirements, see where we need that. That would be $9,000. And then we did replace the lighting in the current gym. We've gone through the last several years using the rebates and some of those energy efficient programs to update lighting throughout the rec center. We have done the gym, but I think you still look at replacing this with the current gym, just making sure it all flows together. At least look at it for the fee of $2,500. Other expenses, again, like I mentioned, travel, shipping, printing, those small reimbursable expenses will not exceed $20,000. So staff is recommending the fee proposal for a total recommendation of $492,805, and the $19,900 that is out of a separate fund for the rec center building improvements project. Budgeting funding. Local option sales tax bond proceeds $5.6 million. Capital loan notes proceeds $700,000. Available local option sales tax fund. Already, City Council has put aside $1 million when we were doing the bond referendum and that information. So that is still in the plans for a total available funding of $7.3 million. The city is authorized to issue up to $7.6 million for the rec center improvements, with the proceeds for the issuance on June 22nd, 2020. Any questions with that? In your packet, you had the full proposal and their proposal specifically of what I've gone over tonight in my memorandum in their project. So I would answer any questions. This is, a priority of the council, and we've talked about this, for a year and a half now. And
Why are we going to issue $7.6 million in bonds when the project is estimated to be close to that, but we have $1 million cash
So
in
we
local
wouldn't.
option sales tax?
So
Why
we
should
wouldn't. I mean, as it's noted in the memo, we anticipate issuing $5.6 million. The council, when we were looking at the larger project, took some actions back in June of last year that would allow you to issue up to $7,300,000. The council is not obligated to issue that much in debt, but you're authorized with the action you took and then with the local option sales tax vote that occurred and the approval of that vote. So certainly the council, you don't have to issue anything, but you're authorized to issue up to $7.6 million.
Authorized up to 7.6 with the total available funding as shown in the budgeting at 7.3.
Yeah.
But we're going to issue 5.6 approximately for the local option sales tax.
Correct.
And when we were promoting the referendum, that was a part of the discussion that we put forward with the public, that if they voted yes for lost, then that would be our intent if the whole thing passed. But we did pass the resolution, and so therefore, up to that amount, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And the pool part was strictly just bonds,
Right.
wasn't it, Mike? That was a strictly bonds, yeah.
I do have a couple construction comments or questions I meant. The walking track, the elevated walking track, will there be any interference at all with playing basketball underneath? Will it be high enough out of the way, or will there be some areas where it might be restriction?
Should be high enough and out of the way. The one concern would be the southwest corner where the main entrance is now. That corner shooting from there, but should be high enough that it should not affect someone shooting from the corner.
For the most part, it should be back behind the basketball rims anyways, isn't it?
It will be, but if you're standing right here, this is the corner of the hoop or the court, and the hoop's over here. You would think that would interfere, but when we've looked at it closer and just discussions, we feel it's going to be fine.
And then the other thing is, you're looking at over a year construction on this. A lot of concerns are in the locker rooms. How are you going to do those locker rooms and stay maintained open?
I think you start on one side, men's or women's, close one down, construct the other one. And so if you leave the women's open right away, you're going to have one side women's and girls, one side men's and boys. Men might have to come out into the hallway to get into the pool area or just come out. Women will still be able to get out or have that door to get into the pool part. So it'd be a little inconvenience for a short period of time, but basically the men would probably just come. They're going strictly to the pool area. That's what they're using. They come out of that door and go right into the pool area. It's a short, but that's really the only way I could see we could do it. And
I didn't know if you had any contact with RGD if they had any ideas on.
They're online.
Yeah.
They are
I see.
online.
I was
Yeah.
wondering if he's going to answer that.
Okay.
Yep, yeah, here he comes. Go ahead, Al.
Well, I would agree with Jack and what he has indicated there. I think our best opportunity is to look at closing it down and actually doing it in 2 phases, where we close one side down and do the remodeling there, take the other side, and we may put up a temporary wall or something to help make it more convenient for people to get into the pool. That's just something we'll need to work through as we work through the sequencing of construction as we move through design.
Then the other question is the current basketball courts out there now, when you put this elevated walking track, are they going to be closed?
Yes, those we will have to close for a period of time while we're coming in to construct the new jogging track. And the reason for that is we're going to have to reinforce the existing bar joists that hold up the roof in order to suspend the new jogging track from that. So we will have a period of time where we may need to close that down. We'll try and develop a sequence where maybe we can keep one court open and work on part of it, get the structure up in that area, and then we may move over and do the other part of it. So we'll kind of, again, look at that as we move through the sequencing part of the design phase.
While we're speaking on that current gymnasium, we will have a plan to protect the floor that's in place.
Yes, we'll make sure our documents include protection of that existing floor.
Thank you.
Al, this is Eric Jensen, the mayor. When they construct the new part, will that, for the new basketball court area, the new gym part, will that kind of go up all before they tear down that the wall in between?
Yes, we'll have them construct the new gym first, and we would have them do that before they go into the existing gym and start to put up any of the suspended jogging track in there. That way we'll gain use of that new gym space when we have to take part of the existing gym offline. But we would certainly have them put that new gym in place before we create any openings
Yeah, okay,
to existing gym.
okay, thank you.
The questions I've been asking, or what public has been asking me, and one more is, we're busier in the wintertime with the gyms and the locker rooms than we are in the summertime. Is that correct, Chad?
Yeah.
Is there gonna be any concern on, not having construction during the wintertime? I know you can do some, but,
Yeah.
you got a lot of people that still wanna use that thing.
Yep. That's definitely a concern. Fortunately, to get progress, you need to close down some areas for a period of time. Ideally, we would do this construction April, May, June, July, the hot months that people aren't really in there. Maybe there's some, if we have to do it through the winter months, maybe there's some opportunities for us to look at getting some other areas in town to have a gym or do something that we can maybe try to accommodate some of our members.
They all understand there's gonna be interruptions, but they are just wanting to know,
Yeah.
In the future, what's this gonna look like for them for still using the rec?
The idea being, I think it's gonna be open up for significant more use. You just don't want to see your patrons in any risk of something falling and hitting them, and it's just not worth it. So, yeah. I'm sure there'll be some downtime.
Oh, yeah. They're just wanting to know how
Right.
much and when.
Yeah. I think that once they get the schematics and everything drawn out, I think we'll have a better idea of timing. Would that be correct, Al?
Yes, as we get further in the design phase, we'll put together a more refined schedule to kind of identify those down times that we would anticipate. I think our intent right now is to bid this in January, the first part of January. We want to try and bid this when a lot of contractors are looking for work. But they would most likely not start construction until probably March. Depends obviously on the weather. This year they would have had a great March to start construction. The renovation work of those locker rooms would be something that would be great for us to kind of schedule for next summer. So the summer of would be
22.
22. Yeah.
And then probably, as we get further into this, we can answer those questions a little
Yeah,
better. And I think
they're just
notification of the public.
being a representative of the people that have been asking.
Yep. We need to get those concerns out there, and I wholeheartedly agree. And I think then we can get on the radio and say, hey, these are the times this is gonna be down.
And I would
Probably a
say,
good idea.
if I can interject, one thing I would say is very similar to like the library project. We really spent a lot of time thinking about phasing and frankly, at the end of the day, made some options to get to temporary space. And I'm not saying we're gonna do temporary space for the rec center at all, but phasing is a very important thing. We get that members need to have that consistency. So, some of the things Jack and I have already been talking about a little bit is we have the swim teams. And so making sure we have locker rooms available. So, we'll work with the schools to get kind of schedules. We'll work with CAS to get their schedules so that, we know on April 1st, 2022, that's the last meet, if that's the date. And then, they can go through September. And so we'll really try to make sure that happens. And then a little bit with the locker rooms too. I think there's a lot of different ideas, a lot of different ways we can approach it. One thought I have is, okay, we're going to do the women's and girls side first, get that converted. We can kind of coordinate and make the men's and boys on one side and women's and girls on the other side of our existing locker room. I think there's some opportunity there, but then we're also going to gain 4 family change rooms once the women's side is done. And so maybe that becomes either the men's or the women's temporarily, and then the new space converts to whatever that space is. So I think there's just a lot of different ideas. We'll work through it. Phasing is going to be a very important thing for us to look through and consider as we move forward. Because we get at the end of the day, we know it's going to be construction. It's going to be disruptive. there'll be challenges, but it'll be important for us to communicate to our members what those challenges are and really try to work through that during construction.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I think Laverne wanted to address is communication with the public, so that they're aware.
Exactly.
Good idea. Okay.
I do want to mention a little bit, I was a little concerned a while back, you guys all know that this is a council vote and not a public vote, so I asked for some extra time on that. And I reached out because I wanted to get as much feedback as I could. I reached out to a minimum of 50 people, and of those 50 people, I told them, go out and reach out to more people so I can get a large number back to me. And I'm not exactly sure how many that is because some of those 50 people, didn't do anything and some did 2 and some did over a dozen. So I don't know that total amount. But of all those people, there was 1 no. Everybody else, especially the walking track, they really want that walking track. In fact, I had an 83-year-old person said, let's get this going. My clock's ticking, So that was kind of, but that's the feedback I got, and I guess that was good enough for me.
I know Jefferson, their rec center, they have a elevated walking track in that rec center they've got there. The DMU school you're familiar with, when they redid theirs, they've got a walking track up above theirs, and I think there's another place in Waukee that I'm familiar with. Every time I've been to one of those, there's people on those things, and they're just going.
Well, I went and visited the Ankeny one.
Ankeny one.
Yeah, and that guy that ran that told me once they got that in, the amount of new members that were elderly increased a lot, especially for the wintertime for them. You got a good, safe place to walk.
Yeah, it's indoors, no ice, no snow.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to worry about the basketballs hitting you. And it's always been, I think, a concern I've had with the being able to walk around that gym in the rec center when it was first developed. And, being a kid down there and you're watching these people and you're shooting basketballs and they're hitting the people that are trying to walk indoors. And like, oh, that just doesn't work real well. But
one of the other things when we ran this together with the pool, they were confused when they were voting. They thought when they were voting, they didn't want the people wanted what we're doing, but they didn't want the pool. And they were confused enough on how it's voted that they voted no on that. And now they understand that, the pool is not going to be part of this. So, now they're saying, yeah, I understand it. I want it. And they would have voted yes the first time if they didn't get confused.
it would be something to bring back then in the future. So I think we need to get this done and we can work on the next one down the road, I think that's good. Any other questions for Al? Is he still online?
Yep.
Yeah, no? Oh. Thanks, Al. I appreciate your time and look forward to getting this project going. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Al. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay.
Any other questions for Jack? If not, I'll look for a motion to approve the contract for services agreement with RDG Planning and Design for the Carroll Recreation Center Building Improvement Plan 2021 for the total design fee of $492,805 plus expenses incurred in this work at cost plus 10%, not to exceed $20,000.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. Did you get that one?
Yes.
Okay. If there's no other discussion, we'll go ahead and vote, please.
Dirks,
Yes.
Fleshner,
Yes.
Haley,
Yes.
Seaman,
Yes.
Base. Yes. Cox.
Yes.
Resolution is approved.
Thank you. The next item is under reports, and we have the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, COVID-19 grant public hearing, and it is 6 o'clock. And we'll open a public hearing for this development project. And Mike, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a required public hearing as part of the Community Development Block Grant, COVID-19 dollars that we received back earlier actually in 2020. We did receive this grant in an amount not to exceed $49,050. The purpose of this was to assist local nonprofits in providing restaurant gift cards to families and to cover processing costs for meat donated to local, excuse me.
Pleasure.
To cover processing costs for meat donated to local food programs. The first part of this program, again, the gift cards, was a grant to cover a $25 restaurant gift card to families underserved by Carroll County Community of Concern Food Pantry and the New Opportunities in 2019. In 2019, Carroll County Community of Concern Food Pantry served 937 families, and New Opportunities served 825 families. Under this program, Carroll County Community of Concern has served 727 families as of March 4th of 2021, with plans to distribute the final 210 gift cards by April 24th of this year. New Opportunities has served 646 families, of which 179 families received more than one gift card. And this was, again, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic to support the growing needs and to address hunger in the Carroll community. The amount specifically provided to each agency was $23,425 to Carroll County Community of Concern and $20,625 to New Opportunities. The second part of this program was to provide meat processing dollars to New Opportunities to cover processing of meat that was donated. 832 families were able to be supported through this activity. And again, this was in response to the COVID-19 pandemic to support the growing need and to address hunger in the Carroll County community. And specifically, this grant provided $5,000 to New Opportunities for that meat processing. Both of these activities serve people that are low to moderate income persons and families that are facing food insecurity issues in Carroll County. No person, this is a required statement under the program, that no person was displaced or relocated as part of this project, and the project is being funded entirely through the Community Development Block Grant provided by the Iowa Economic Development Authority, and there was no local city match that was made part of this grant. Now, during the public hearing today, the public is asked to comment on the program in general, and specifically there are two items that we're going to ask the community's input on. First is community development and housing needs, what they are for low to moderate income persons in our community, and any planned or potential activities that the public feels we should do to address these needs. And then the other item is to other community development and housing needs and any planned or potential activities to address these needs. A copy of the public hearing notice was published for tonight's hearing in the Carroll Times Herald on February 23rd of 2021, and the public is asked if they don't participate this evening or feel comfortable participating this evening, certainly they can contact me directly here at City Hall. My phone number is 712-775-7505. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the council or public has on this item today.
All the gift cards, everything, that was all dispersed, correct? There wasn't any left.
Dispersed by New Opportunities. Again, Carroll County Community of Concern still has, as of Friday, had 210 gift cards that they are working through dispersing. They do believe they'll be able to get those dispersed by the April 24th deadline.
At this time, it is a public hearing. If there is anyone online, please, you'll need to unmute your mic or press *6 if you're using a cell phone. Not hearing. Are there any questions from the council? Not hearing anything at this time. It is 6:04 and we'll close the public hearing. And if there's no other discussion with regards to this, we don't have to do any action with this thing. It's just the public hearing part. Okay. So Since that is a non-actionable item, we will move on then to second item under the reports is the sidewalk and patio, Southside Shelter House Parks Department, opening of the bid. And Jack, please.
Thank you, Mayor. We had 3 bids on February 25th for the concrete work around the north, east, and south sides of the shelter house. It's time to replace the sidewalks there. And we want to, right now on the east side, there's about 7 feet of concrete for a small patio. We'd like to extend that out 15 feet, have some other picnic tables out there. A lot of people like to sit outside during the summer months when it's nice weather. So there's a potential of having some more picnic tables out there. Southside shelter is slightly the most used between that and Graham Park. It's just a few more with Southside than over Graham Park. The low bid was $15,777. I attached the bid results and the diagram of what we're doing down there. So I would answer any questions, anything you want to know about that. But this is in the budget. It's a local option sales tax, and we do have the funds to pay for that.
It's at the sidewalk, if I remember is that on the south side of that shelter house?
There's a north,
There's
it's
a north
on
one?
the north, south, and the east side has a little bit larger sidewalk. Right now,
Yeah.
they're 5 feet or 4 feet, and we're gonna have 5 feet. And then the east side that goes out to the park, that you can see the playground equipment, you can see the different parts of the park, will be double that size.
Okay.
Be nice.
Are there any questions for Jack? If not, I will look for a motion to approve the bid from Concrete Creators, Carroll, Iowa, for the bid price of $15,777 for the sidewalk and patio Southside Shelter House. That's it?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. If there's no other discussion, we'll go ahead and vote, please.
Scott?
Yes.
Fletcher?
Yes.
Seaman?
Yes.
Dirk?
Yes.
Haley?
Yes.
Bates?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jack.
Yep.
With that, I trust everyone's read the committee reports. I don't have any comments this evening. Are there any comments from the city council? Any comments from the city manager?
No, I was just gonna have Chief Burke kind of give an update on the incident that occurred on Friday here.
Oh, yeah, very good. I did see a news article on the newspaper or the radio station, I think.
So, excuse me, the suspect that we're looking for is still at large. He did steal a vehicle here in Carroll, which was recovered in Chicago Heights, Illinois, which is a suburb on the southern side of Chicago. So we believe the suspect is currently there. We have been working with the female party that was in the car too. She's been cooperative for the most parts. We believe that she has had contact with him now and that he is back in the Chicago area. So we're pretty confident that he is there. So our manhunt currently in town has stopped, but we will issue warrants out for the subject's arrest. The officer who's injured is going to probably be out of work 6 to 8 weeks. We're still waiting on some follow-up with some medical professionals. He has a fracture in his back and not requiring surgery, mostly just time to heal that and hopefully get back to work and be ready to go. So he's doing good. He's in good spirits. I spoke with him quite a few times over the weekend and again today, and he's ready to get back to work already. So I know it's early, but the doctor said it'd be a few weeks of pain and then it should slowly get better from there.
I guess I just, from what you had said to me, and I got to thinking as I was coming home, then it wasn't one of our cars that got, one of the police cars that got.
We did get a hard car that got hit. So when the officer got
okay.
stuck on the roof of this guy's car, one of the other officers attempted to pull in front of him to slow him down or stop him, at which point he sideswiped our car. So we got some damage there. We'll get that inspected this week and get it for repair, but nothing that's going to be, it's not going to total the vehicle out, but we will have some damage there we'll have to take care of.
That's not one of the cars we were going to trade in, was it? Is it
No, it's
fairly new?
3 years old, maybe 2, 3 years old. So about half its life cycle.
Okay. My main concern was our officer. I didn't know if pulled him into the car, or just exactly what happened, and
Yeah,
or
so
if they
he,
hit him, or
they did hit him. He was moving from the passenger side to the driver's side and went around the front of the vehicle. At that point, the suspect had jumped the center console and took off forward, striking the officer, which then put him on the roof, and then continued down Burgess Avenue at speeds over 60 miles an hour. He was waiting for them to slow down so he could bail off at a slower speed, but that didn't happen. He hit the culvert before that. They slowed down.
Do we know, Brad, if this person was taking up residency here in Carroll? or-
Attempting to, he had not yet. He had applied for an apartment to share an apartment with someone who currently lives at one of our apartment complexes, but had not gone through the process yet. It was reported to us that he'd been in town for 3 days.
Brad, can you say what you're thinking about charging him with?
We have a message into the county attorney's office this morning. We're waiting for a response back. We'll have an eluding charge. There's an interference with injury, and we also believe we have an assault on an officer charge that we'll be able to charge him with also. So we're waiting for confirmation, then we'll get those warrants put out hopefully the next day or two.
Thank you.
And Brad, since he already has warrants on him, who takes precedent? How does that work?
Depends where he gets picked up. If he gets picked up in Illinois, he'll probably deal with the Illinois issues first and then come to Iowa. If he happens to get picked up closer to Carroll, he'll potentially come here first and then go there. So it kind of just depends where.
Decided by a judge or what?
Not really. It's kind of decided about where he gets picked up. If he's in Iowa, it's easier to extradite in Iowa than it is back to Illinois. So he'll potentially come here first, because if he gets stopped in not Carroll County, they want to get him out of their jail as quick as possible, and they'll ship him to us because we'll pick him up within a day. Or in Illinois, you got to wait for a governor's warrant for extradition. It could take a week, 2 weeks. It's a little bit slower to cross those state lines. So we'll just have to wait and see where he gets captured at.
the officer in our prayers. It's tough to hear when that goes down. You don't like to hear that. I'm glad he's okay.
So he'll be good. He thinks 6 to 8 weeks, so he's ready to get back to work. So hopefully we'll get him healed up.
Good. All right. Thanks, Brad. Appreciate it. Then the next item is the housing work section, and I think, Mike, are you ready?
I am, Mayor and Council. I have distributed this evening a copy of the PowerPoint presentation I'm going to do. Just as kind of a disclosure to Council, this PowerPoint presentation was given about a week and a half ago to a group of individuals in Carroll, including real estate agents and other individuals builders that had kind of interest in housing and what was transpiring. And certainly, I think it was a really good discussion we had. There's no answers that came out of this. And frankly, I don't think there's any answers that have come out of tonight's discussion. But it's more to kind of move the ball and really start that discussion. So I'm going to go through a couple different things. I'm going to start first kind of giving an overview of kind of the current state of housing in Carroll. This slide here really shows kind of what was happening in our housing over the last decade. And if you go back and look even before this, 10 years earlier, we've probably seen double 20 to 40 houses a year, pretty average. Last decade, really about 10 to 20 houses every year. In 19, we actually had 7 housing units, and then in 2020, we had 1 single family home, and then 4 units, 2 duplex buildings for a total of 5 units. So certainly a downward trend that we don't want to see continue in Carroll. Residential remodels, kind of one nice thing you would see is we had 73 units or $2.4 million. That was up substantially over the year before, and actually one of our largest years in remodeling. And that's one thing we do hear from our kind of builders. What's happening is they've really moved to the remodel market right now. It's a pretty hot market. Housing's tight. One thing I'll point out in the Carroll County housing study that CADC did, really in a good market, doesn't matter what housing type you have, you really want 5 to 7% vacancy. That's really going to keep your market kind of versatile. You're not going to see kind of prices appreciation running away. And really, when you have individuals looking to move to a community, there's going to be housing available for them. In 2016, when I moved here, kind of looking back, I believe there was about 60 houses on the market. And I did talk with real estate agents, and they kind of confirmed, yeah, that would be kind of what their recollection was. They can't go back and look at multiple listing services like historically what's on it. I may actually start asking them in January to kind of get a snapshot of what's on time, what's happening, but they couldn't go back in time. But that's 1.9%. And just looking back, that was really a discussion item of saying we don't have enough housing. You know, we were saying we're in a crisis. Today there are 10 houses on the market. And so that's 0.3%. So it's a real tight housing market right now in Carroll County. Another thing we look at is kind of lot inventory. Burrell's Addition and Oak Park Heights. Really, the Burrell Addition, there's no available lots. There's 3 vacant lots, but they're really owned by the adjacent owners, so they're not available. Oak Park Heights subdivision, there are 5 lots that are available. I don't know what the price point for those, probably $25,000 to $35,000. And then there are 2 lots owned by the adjacent property owners that are likely not available. Rolling Hills, there are 13 lots available. Price range there is $35,000 to $43,000. 2 lots are now sold, so they're not available. They'll be constructed on hopefully soon. There are, in the southern portion of the Rolling Hills, there is a area that could be developed pretty quickly, 23 lots. Price point talking to the developer there would be $40,000 to $53,000 for those. North Ridge subdivision, there's currently 37 available lots in that development. Price range is $52,000 to $59,000. Then there are 5 lots that are currently sold and not available right now. And then you have Timber Creek West. There are 2 lots that are currently available. Price of that is $68,000. Likely it's 1 buildable lot, but there are 2 individual platted lots there. There are 5 lots that are various status. There's one that probably has a utility issue that just will make it unbuildable. And then there's some lots that are owned by different owners that make them unavailable. Timber Creek East, there are 17 available lots. Price range there is $46,000 to $68,000. Then there are 17 lots in that development that have been sold and no longer available. Some just are owned by the neighbors. They want to kind of maintain kind of the property around them. Others are likely being held by individuals for future development for their personal use. So overall, we have 74 lots that are available, 7 unavailable, another 27 are unknown. We do have 23 lots that would be available once development is completed, and then there's about 10 lots throughout the community just that are infill lots that are available. So from a lot inventory standpoint, really we're in really good shape there. We don't need to go build a bunch of lots. There are lots available. Probably in the lower price point, there's a little bit of a need there. I would say on our value lots, but our upper end lots, our mid-range lots, there is good lots. Yes, Mayor.
The definition of lot availability unknown. What do you mean by that?
So for various reasons, they're just owned by someone else. There's some utility issue. They're just not available. Maybe if you called up someone and said, "Hey, can I buy that lot from you?" They'd be willing to sell the lot.
Okay.
They're not owned by the developer.
They're not owned by the developer, basically.
Or a builder.
Okay.
So
They could be by an adjacent homeowner or just someone that has purchased it.
Yep.
Down the road for possible.
For
okay.
future. And there's one in here talking to the original developer. I know in Northridge, someone bought a lot. It's been owned by them for like 4 or 5 years. They actually think they're no longer interested in building on that, but they still own the lot.
But there's not a for sale sign on it.
There's not a
that
for
says-
sale sign on it.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense.
So,
Thank you.
any other questions on lot availability? Moving ahead, one of the questions I really think too that we need to really think about is kind of the housing mix that we have going on. This is kind of a breakdown of the housing, looking at single family, multifamily. We're very dominant on single family. 84.2% is single family. So with the meeting we had, I highlighted 4 communities. These were metro communities. The first was Ankeny. And you look over the years, 51% single family, 24% is duplex, and the rest is multifamily, 24%. So, you see about half single family, quarter duplex, quarter multifamily. Johnston, 33% is single family, townhomes is 7.8, and then multifamily is 58.7. Now, one of the things I'll point out as you see here, there's differences. Every community kind of reports their housing stock differently, so there's no consistent way other than probably single family. Duplex is pretty clear. West Des Moines was the last community we kind of highlighted. And so you look here, 33.9% is single family, townhomes is 20%, multifamily apartments is 45%, and then about 1% over the last 6 years has been multifamily condo. So, really what I was really trying to point out there, now these were metro communities, really saying, we do have this mix that, we're by far dominant in single family, but we really don't have much in multifamily. Where you look at these other communities, growing communities, and the communities I hear that we kind of want to see a little bit of housing, want to see more diversity. These are the communities we maybe want to aspire to. Maybe these aren't the communities we want to aspire to. Well, one of the things the builders had asked for was to look at some other communities. So there's 2 other communities. They weren't shared last Friday. We didn't have them. One was Pella. Now these are 2015 through 2020 numbers here. But again, 51% is single family, duplex is 47%, and then mobile homes was 1.3%. And then the other one was Grinnell, 24.7%, single family, duplex is 2.2%, and then multifamily is 73%. Now they had a large multifamily project in 1 year. That year actually skewed it to be 94% of their housing stock. But again, you look at over time, we haven't had a multifamily apartment project built in 20 years. And so that really, again, I think highlights the kind of the mix question. And so here's kind of a breakdown again, looking at all the comparisons. Grinnell, I would say, was not able to get 2020 numbers, but I probably still would have highlighted 2015 just because they had that big apartment project. And I think that makes a difference as you're looking at the mix. So one of the questions I think, I'm not advocating that we go build a whole bunch of apartments. I'm not saying that at all. I think the example that we showed was this townhome project. This is owner-occupied project. It's a 5-unit building. And, what I call shotgun style house. It's narrow, 20, 25 feet wide. It's still a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 2-car garage. It's a very nice home. But the price point, this is an Ankeny, I can buy it today for $194,000. So I think sometimes when we talk about affordability, we kind of get maybe kind of sidetracked thinking we just want multifamily apartments. But I think there's some products that we really need to look at. I think what you're seeing by 706 Development down in Rolling Hills, I understand that they have 4 units that are up under construction. So 2 buildings, 4 units of duplex, 3 of the 4 units are sold now. And part of it is price point. They're hitting those about 250 or 225, 250. They're affordable. I think it's also hitting a area that people want to have maintenance free. They don't want to mow. They don't want to worry about snow removal. And I think you have generationally now. This is 2-story. I don't think this works for everyone. I wouldn't say let's go build a whole bunch of 2 stories, but I think you do have younger people that want something like this. I think you have older people that want to have that 1-story slab on grade type style. I think we need to have a mix. I think that's my point is, I think one of the issues you run into, and I think it's the highlight of why you don't see this, is it's an investment. Someone has to be doing this kind of on a spec basis. I think even with those duplexes, no one was saying I want that duplex at 225 to 250, but you go build them on a spec basis. They can sell, but this project here is probably $1 million investment to get 5 units going up, and who's going to make that investment? I think that's the question. So it's kind of the current housing stock issues that at least I kind of see out there. So I think the next question really kind of comes into is what can the city do? How can we interface in this, and certainly, I guess, before I jump into this, if there's any questions on what I hit, kind of building permits, the lot availability, or even the mix that's out there.
Just one for me, Mike, if we have a place in town that is rented to more than one person, like a home, is that in our statistics called a single family dwelling?
That would be a single family dwelling.
Okay, so as long as if they're not partitioned, but a couple people are renting them, that's actually still called.
It'd still be considered a single family.
Being rented to.
And that's pretty common. I would say that's common in a lot of communities, so that's not unique in Carroll.
Mike, if I remember correctly, excuse me, when the realtors spoke, they mentioned that it's just impossible to get a contractor. And the plumbers, the electricians, and so on. A lot of these lots are sold, but they're waiting for a contractor, and they're backed up, what did they say, at least a year?
2 years. 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years.
I mean, I could go to a builder that's in Carroll today, and I think that,
Yeah.
and I should have said it earlier, I could give them cash up front, build my house, and their comments, we'll see in 2 years.
So when we look at, my point being, when you look at the number of building permits, we had 1. Well, we'd have a lot more if we had construction people around. And so that's going to be a big challenge also, regardless of the type of housing. And they did recommend a mix.
Yep.
So, yeah, the townhouses, duplexes, et cetera. So that's a big challenge.
Yeah, and I'll use myself as an example. I think there was no way when I graduated college that I was going to be able to buy a single family home. That was going to be impossible. And in fact, right out of college, even working for Ankeny, I lived in an apartment for about 2 years. I saved up money, but even at that point, then I was able to buy. My first down payment was on a condo unit, and I got my foot in the door, got that condo, actually built some equity, and then I was able to buy a single family home with the equity I built. And so I think, we need to think, what's that lifestyle, that life cycle housing? I think there needs to be a broad-based approach on the type of housing and the mix we have, because just to say everyone can be in a single family home, we're gonna make only single family homes available, I think it's gonna make it really difficult, because again, my first condo in Ankeny was $74,000. And, we talk about, well, let's get a $200,000 home. That was just unattainable for me at that time. And I think you do have a lot of individuals that are graduating college with just a lot of debt. I mean, it's really a mortgage payment that they're graduating college with. And so I think we just really have to think, what is that life cycle housing? Because again, on the other end of the spectrum is we need housing that people feel like they can move into as a downsize, and that's not going to be a brand new big mortgage payment for them as they go from a single family home to a duplex or a townhome. And because if we can get that side of the spectrum figured out, now you're opening up some single family homes that are maybe a little bit more affordable for people to get into. So I think we really have to think about that mix. And I think for too long, we've maybe been focused way too much on just one or two segments, because if you go back and read the Carroll County housing study, it was very clear. It's not just one segment that is problematic, it's the whole spectrum. And I should have started out, and I think one of the things that, as we started to put this together, and a couple things have come together, in the last 2 weeks, I've talked to 2 major employers in our community, and both of them are just having struggles hiring people. The first employer, they made job offers to 2 individuals, 6-figure salaries, engineering level positions, people we want in our community. They signed the letter saying, yep, I'm accepting the job offer. I'm going to move here and take this job. They both rescinded their offer because they couldn't find housing in our community. The second employer, again, it was a computer network specialist, $100,000 job for that position. That individual is moving, but they're not going to be in Carroll County because they can't find housing. And I think those are the individuals we want in our community. If we don't have housing for them, even at that level, I mean, they're looking for single-family, higher-end houses. We can't even figure that out. I mean, it's the whole gamut that's really broken.
I remember two of the realtors said where they're seeing the biggest demand is, one said in the 250 to 300. The other realtor that spoke up said 180 to 300,000, but they're seeing demand 300,000. Who's going to build a spec home in that? You know, it's a challenge. But I was amazed at what the people they're working with that want to live in Carroll. I think we have really good jobs here, good pay, and I think it's great that they are looking for that type of housing.
We just have to figure out how to get the houses up.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of, you know, been having lots of good conversations with people about all economic development areas recently. And I do think there is this broader kind of chicken and the egg thing. And I think we're at a good point that we're kind of throwing everything at it. And we do have to work through all of these issues with the retail component, with the housing component, because again, it's what's going to drive people hopefully to consider Carroll and be here for our employers, be here for our community, and the whole game. And I only went backward one more slide because again, you know, it's $200,000, and again, that's one of the hot markets right now in Carroll. Is if I put my house up today, it'd be sold probably by tomorrow, and it's just the hot market right now.
Well, the realtor said some of them don't even make multiple listings.
Mhm. A lot of them weren't, they said.
Dawn down in Manning, I still always love her. It was in the Des Moines Register. The best houses sell at the funeral home. And that's kind of true here in Carroll. I will tell you that a good friend of ours here in Carroll, they have already said, you know, we're going to retire. We're going to leave Carroll when we retire. And I've already said we want to buy your house. And so we've already had that conversation. We know what house we want to move to next, probably in the next 3 years. And it's the best houses sell by relationships in this town.
Maybe you want to share that address and name of the current owner with the public?
No, because I want to buy it.
You know, this is a great discussion, and it was fantastic around the room with the builders and the employers as well as bankers and the like at that meeting. It was really good to have them there. We can't forget our skilled trades. You know, Mike, you gave a super example of the college student graduating and needing somewhere to move into too. Well, we also need those builders in town and the support people behind them. So there's your chicken and the egg thing, right? I couldn't believe I got to sit in a room with a group of builders who told me, we need more builders in town. Please go out and find a way to attract more into town for us because we are overwhelmed. We can't do any more. We're at capacity. That speaks volumes to their character to be able to sit up and say, hey, get us more people here to compete with us in essence. I'd really look forward to hitting the full spectrum of housing and trying to find a way to develop not only that $200,000 home, but those other smaller multifamily homes so we can hopefully filter through some of the single family dwellings that can be for young families as well.
So Clay, when you were there, did the construction people offer a suggestion?
You know, that was their suggestion, was to go out and find a way, Jerry, to attract young builders to the Carroll area to help build the town. That was their suggestion. They also suggested that we invest in property, not in buying the properties, but helping to bring down the cost of some of the properties that are being developed and built on. That's a complex scenario, but certainly something we can explore.
And so if I can segue, I think,
Please.
one of the things we talked a lot about, what can the city do? And there's a lot of different ideas and there's a lot of different approaches we can do. This is certainly not all of those approaches. I think there's a lot of different angles we can take. And I think maybe there's even more discussion we have with other communities, but this is kind of some of those approaches. I mean, there's our traditional ones. TIF is the easy one. So really the city is financially either developing the lots or providing financial dollars to developers to develop those lots. Now, I would say in TIF in particular right now, we have good lot inventory. So I don't think there's a huge need for us to go build a whole bunch of lots. Now, there may be a lower end dollar point we want to hit, but there's not a lot of inventory from that perspective, or there's not a lot of huge need in that because we do have the lots. There's tax abatement, and there's different ways you can do this. The easiest is our residential is 100% 5 years on the first 75,000. That's really just the standard allowed by statute. You can also do, you can declare a slum and blight community. You can do targeted low to moderate income housing or historic areas where it says we don't have anything that would qualify for historic in Carroll, but you could look at a slum and blight designation. Then you can do up to 100% for 10 years. Multifamily residential or commercial, you can do 3 years with 3 or more living units. You can do 10 years, 100% for tax abatement in there. Now, one of the cautionary notes is you can't do TIF and tax abatement together. If you're going to incentivize lot development through property taxes, you can't abate it because you're not going to get any dollars to go towards TIF.
Are we restricted by law to this, or is this just restricted by a suggestion?
This is restricted by law. This would be the top end. And I'll get to go through some more tax abatement examples as we move along. But those are the top end restrictions. If you don't want to do slum and blight, the top end you can do is 5 years, 100% on the first $75,000 of value. What I will tell you, and you'll see here in a little bit, there's a lot of cities that I look at that are not slum and blight. They've declared the whole city slum and blight, and they're doing larger tax abatements. Now, that slum and blight designation is really just in a book that no one sees.
Leading people to Jesus through friendship, good communication, and the resurrection.
I'm going to mute Gene Ludwig because he's coming through.
Thank you for joining us.
Sorry about that. Not sure why all of a sudden it popped up that way, but any other questions on that? So we do have, as the council knows, we do have some urban revitalization area. We did this a little over 2 years ago now, which allows within a very specific area of the community, really 18th Street, Grant Road, Raccoon River, 71 for the most part. That allows exemption on the first $75,000 of value for 5 years, 100%. Now, we've had one project in the 2 years apply for it, and that project was a multifamily project and it abated $187,760 in value. Now, that will expire July 1st of 2029. What that means is any new projects would not be eligible under this. Now, we can certainly renew that and extend that. But that's when that district will expire. Now, if you complete a project before then, you will still get the 5 years, but just no new projects can come on.
That's my question. What if they start in 2028 and the project's done by 2029? The 5 years, they'll still get the 5 years.
Correct. As long as they complete it by July 1st.
The project completed by, okay.
Of that 187,000, how much actual tax savings? Do you know by chance?
I'd have to calculate that. I don't know that. I don't know, Laura, if you want to, we can calculate it and get it to you.
Just a rough estimate, can you? No, okay.
There's some examples in a little bit, maybe that'll come out in this, I don't know. So I'm gonna kind of go into some case study stuff. These are a bunch of metro communities that that have construction without tax abatement. Now, the examples I provided you of Ankeny, Johnston, West Des Moines, they do not offer, none of them offer tax abatement. Then there's a number of communities that do offer tax abatement in the Des Moines Metro. And then you do get stuff like Bondurant, Indianola, Perry, Pleasant Hill. They've declared slum and blight, and so they have more than that, 100% 5 years for $75,000 of value. Some do offer just that cap. So it's kind of all over the board, and slum and blight is pretty easy designation to declare. There's kind of a case study. We talked a little bit about this in Adele. They started offering tax abatement in 2011, and it really started becoming pretty controversial. In 2017, I know the council had a pretty big turnover over this issue. And what they offered was 100% for 7 years. It didn't matter what the value was, no value cap. In 2018, the council decided we're gonna cap it. So projects have to be approved or done by 2019, be 100% for 7 years. So it had to be started in 18, completed by 19 to continue to get that. Project started in 2019 and 2020, received 3 years of tax abatement. Year one was 75%, 50%. Last year was 25%. Work had to be completed by December 31st of 2020. Anything after that, there was no abatement. And then any new construction that starts this year has no tax abatement. And really what you can see in Adele is they were in those 20 to 30 units a year. They brought tax abatement, and in fact, really just jumped up. And by 2015, 16, 17, they were in the hundreds of units. Once they took the tax abatement off, they cratered. And really talking with the city administrator there, his comment was you really have to have a pretty clear end game in mind. You have to know where you want to go, what's your goal. And what he said is I would have structured it differently. Now the tax abatement at Dell was started before he was on board. We said, looking back, I'd really do targeted incentives, look at maybe it's 100% on the first $250,000 of value, 75% on the 250 to 500,000, and then maybe 50% over 500,000. Whatever it is, whatever you're trying to incentivize, what your gap is, really move the incentive towards that. And there may be even a question of maybe you say we're not going to give you any incentive on anything over 500,000. Now you'll still get a little bit, but not on that full. If you build $1 million home, you're not going to get the full abatement. The other thing he really talked about is talk to your school districts and really understand, what's their capacity to take more students on, because that can be really straining. Now, I've talked to one of the superintendent presidents, and I need to reach out to and talk with the other one, but the comment really was, we have some capacity, we can handle it, especially with the two districts. Felt really we would have the ability to have the extra students. Didn't see there being an issue. Now, you build 862 homes in a decade, that may change, but really understand kind of what your goal is and really talk with your partners on what the impacts can be to them. Now, I don't see us, even if we offer what Perry did, I'd be really surprised if we seen the building numbers that they did. I think they have the Des Moines influence. We're not going to have the Des Moines influence here. But I think it's a cautionary note there. Question?
Sorry, go ahead.
It sounds like unless we get contractors, we're not going to fix that issue anyway, no matter what we offer for incentives.
Yeah. That is definitely going to be an issue now. And I talk about it a little bit later is I think there's a lot of different ways you can approach the contractor thing. I think you always want local. We want to try to build up our younger contractors, but I think there's also an example in our backyard with Manning, where they actually talked and had conversations with their builders. At the end of the day, the builder said, go do it. They worked with American Classic Homes out of Ankeny, and their deal was if you can get us at least 5 new homes, what we'll do is we'll come build those 5 homes. And there is some, they can bring some trades in outside of this market to come help build those homes. And then it really becomes kind of assembly line. And it's kind of impressive. And I've seen it in other communities where, you have your cement guy come in and do the basement. They moved a lot too, while the framer comes into the lot, and they just go down and knock them out. And that was done in Manning. It was pretty successful. I look at it from a perspective to say, we have a housing need. We have people that really want to move to our community. They just can't find the housing. So is it better to get the house here in the short term, knowing that you get a family here, they're going to be part of our community, and now, there's going to be a time where the plumber needs to come in and do some plumbing work. If there's an HVAC failure, 15 years from now, it's going to have to get re-roofed. I think there's some opportunities long term if you can build that house. But certainly, we don't want to discount the locals, and we really want to work with them first. We really want to work first with trying to see if there's capacity we can build up locally, because again, the easiest economic development is to really bring up what's here before you look outward. But I think there's some opportunities in that avenue too.
I had a couple of after that meeting, contractors talked to me. One thing they pointed out we have to worry about is there's 3 of them currently getting close to retirement. And those guys have told me that there's no problem for them at all to try and find young help somewhere to get in here. So they're, like Carolyn said before, they're not objected to having outside help because they just know they don't have anything. I talked to one young gentleman, and he's 2 years out just remodeling. And that's where most of them are. If you looked at the numbers, remodeling was real high. And it's just like, implement stuff, and that it's more profitable for those guys to remodel than it is to build a new home. I don't know when that swing will be done, remodeling, but I asked him, I said, what would it take to stop remodeling and build new homes? And it's pretty pricey what they would have to stop remodeling.
You almost have to get someone that's fresh out of a trade school to probably get into doing the housing.
And then that led to discussion with bankers about financing, and they did make a point that there's money out there and they're willing to work with young people to help them grow and get into the trades too. It's not a free pass, but it's certainly there, and there are resources for financing for those people to get in the game.
And then they also mentioned that one of these contractors I talked to said they laid out, the construction costs for somebody and they planned on doing it. And then by the time they got all of it done, the lumber price went up so high that the rafters to do their house was $23,000, and 3 months later it was $50,000. So wood has just drastically shot up. Now that's COVID-19 based. I don't know. Will it come back down? There's people wanting to build, but the cost is so expensive right now that they're waiting too.
On tax abatement, Mike, because doesn't the county would also not collect, and the school district would also not collect, correct?
Correct. And so so TIF is, if you recall in TIF, you do have some levies that are still collected by the local jurisdictions. You have your debt service that the city, county schools receive, and then you have your PEPL. There's another school levy that also gets collected. ISL. Thank you, Laura. So, with tax or with TIF, there's still some dollars being generated there. With tax abatement, what happens there is your value basically is frozen at your pre-development level for whatever period of time, or whatever dollar caps you put in there. And so there just is no tax generation with that new value that comes on board. So that's kind of the difference between the two.
I think the schools get the backfill from the state, aren't TIF?
They do. And in reality, they would get some backfill with tax abatement, just the way that school formula works.
Did the Dell notice much of a windfall after, some of these programs start falling off, but yet their valuation went through the roof.
And certainly it will. I mean, you look at these values now, like your 15 numbers aren't still not coming on. They're gonna be a couple of years out still.
Right.
But as those 7-year tax abatements start expiring and that value comes on the tax rolls, they're gonna start seeing value. And there's some other issues that Adele has faced now with this new population. Now they pay utility bills, new and old population, but when you see, okay, now we have this new demand, our sewer treatment plant or our water plant need to have big infrastructures. That obviously upsets some individuals because they don't foresee that. Now, they may have needed to do plant upgrades to address some of the issues similar to how we're addressing issues facing, because we're not seeing big population, but we're gonna have some change in our wastewater plant, for example. But that, unless you're really communicating that, getting that discussion out, that can be really confusing to people to say, well, you're just doing this because of new development, and that can be upsetting to people, and I get it. So TIF and tax abatement are kind of really those traditional tools that I think we think about. There's a lot of other tools that I think we can think about, and what I'd say non-traditional. The first is, we look at just giving some cash incentives. Come build a house in Carroll, and we will give the home for building this home. And I think, you could look at a program where if you're a homeowner, we'll give you a forgivable loan over 5. Builder, maybe once you complete it, we'll give you the incentive. So that's one avenue that you can look at. There is a program I found really interesting Orange City has, where if you go build a spec house and it's not sold within 7 months, the city and their Economic Development Authority actually starts making interest payments. And they make that interest payment over, they'll do months 7 through 12. So people have this incentive to build spec, knowing that, hey, at least there's gonna be some backfill if we can't get it sold. The interesting part is in Orange City, they've never had to pay a dime in interest payments. They've always been sold, and this has been really was able to help jumpstart spec home building in Orange City. Actually, was able to do any kind of building, because I think there was about a 10-year period, there wasn't one new single-family home built in Orange City, and now they're having a lot of construction being built in Orange City. So I think that's one avenue. There's a community, Newton, I'll talk about it a little bit. They do welcome packages through the private side. So if you build a home in Newton, you're going to get a $2,500 private welcome package, and it can be everything from, I think Hy-Vee will give you a $50 gift card. You have different businesses do different things. The YMCA in Newton will give you a free year family membership to their center. The pool gives a free pool pass. But in the end of the day, it comes up to $2,500. And I think there's other ideas. I think we can certainly think about what those other ideas are. Newton, they offered tax abatement up to last year, and that was 100% for 5 years. They now do this incentive that really the housing initiative incentive is what they call it. And if you build a home in 2020, 2021, and the home's at least $180,000, you're going to get $10,000 cash once you build it. And then you have this private welcome package of $2,500 in value. If that home is between $100,000 and $179,000 or $180,000, it's a $5,000 cash incentive. Now, the nice thing about that is people understand what a cash incentive is. Sometimes they don't understand tax abatement. I'm going to show a few more examples later on what kind of the power of tax abatement can be. But again, I'll give you 7 years, 100% tax abatement. A lot of people don't understand that, but hey, build a new house, we get $10,000. You understand what $10,000 is. Newton does do tax abatement. Right now, it's limited for homes under $100,000, so it really is remodeling projects that adds value. You can get that. Multifamily residential, they do have a sliding 5-year tax abatement forgiveness there. I highlighted this because I thought it was very interesting. They have a downtown large project program, 100% tax abatement for 9 years for improvements that add at least $10 million worth of value. I thought it was very interesting. I don't know if 10 million would be the answer in Carroll, Iowa. I think with some of the Maytag things in Newton that's going on, they're looking at doing some really big projects with that property. So it may make sense there, but really kind of comparing. So starting this year, they have this housing, or up to last year, they were doing tax abatement. So this really shows what that tax abatement was on a $100,000 home over 5 years was $10,000 up to $324,714. Now, why I have that number in here, and I show this a little bit later in a couple examples, is that is the average price home in Carroll that was constructed in 2019. That would be $36,000 in tax abatement. So really a real powerful tool in that avenue. But again, I think you have people that don't understand that. They went and did this Newton housing initiative. So that home that's over $180,000 is $10,000 cash incentive, $2,500 welcome, get to know Newton welcome package. So I think it kind of shows you kind of where Newton has been and where they're headed. I think one of the things to point out, a couple things to point out is, first of all, our tax abatement would be a lot different. Newton's tax rate is about 60% more than ours is 60% less than theirs. So, same dollars for us is going to be a lot less in tax abatement. The other thing with the Newton Housing Initiative, that's their dollars. That's either coming out of local option sales tax, the general fund, where TIF or tax abatement, it's really being shared by all the taxing authorities. So it's one of those things of kind of where do you find those dollars?
Are these incentives transferable to the next owner?
Well, tax abatement would be, yep, absolutely. This housing initiative, once you write the check, yep.
I can understand that.
But yeah,
They're all
so,
transferable to.
yep, tax abatement, it goes with the property.
Well, you probably obviously know more about this than I do, but I see that in 5 years, all of a sudden, these houses aren't worth as much.
And I think.
Does that happen with things that, have you experienced this with?
I think Adele talked.
5 years later, all of a sudden you get these properties sitting here nobody wants.
Yeah, I think Adele talked a little bit about that. I think what they seen was properties that didn't have tax abatement. They were a little bit at a disadvantage. So I think some of the community were really upset about that. So that's definitely one of the cautionary notes. You have to understand, again, what are you trying to target? Maybe there's a limited amount of time that you put it on. I think the other issue is, especially if you do 5 years or 7 years, 100%, there's definitely a day that all of a sudden you're paying a big tax bill that maybe you didn't budget for. So that can cause some issues if you're not really planning for that. So again, I think you really have to understand what your aim is, what you're trying to hit, and what your goal is as you set this up, and be very cautious of those things.
Another thing we were cautioned by some of our area builders on was to look out for, I'll say, not to Carroll's traditional building standards housing. Carroll traditionally has a very high standard of building, and the homes are built to a very good level, and to watch out for lesser materials, lesser build quality, that type of thing. They really suggest we watch out for that.
And that's a catch-22 because I understand that viewpoint. And certainly we do have a good housing stock. Now, I would argue not every house is built at a high standard. Come look at my house. It was a bureau house. You rip up the carpet, it's not of any high standard flooring, I will tell you that. And I think there's also a price point issue. And so if we, again, build everything as custom single-family home, that's all you're going to have in your community is custom single-family homes, and that's going to long-term, I think, price us out. So it's a balancing act of, again, I go back to my earlier comment, I think it's the mix of what we need in our community.
I know it'd be a ways, but could you jump back to the example picture slide that you gave Mike with the homes built in one linear building? Yeah, there we go. I thought you had a good point at the meeting that with this type of a structure, you theoretically have less building cost as you don't have, are there 4 units in that?
There's 5, so you miss a lot of exterior walls. It's very narrow construction, so where a 5 units would take up probably, well, would take 5 city lots. This building probably would take 2, maybe 3 city lots. So you figure you have a lot that's $50,000. You've just taken $100,000 off if you can put this on 3 city lots. So there is a lot of efficiencies in just how this gets constructed. And you can as a community say, we still want to have maybe a quarter acre developments per unit. Okay, so you can demand more lot area. But one of the big expenses that's driving a lot of the lot costs in our community is the infrastructure cost. It's the sewer, it's the water, it's the road. And so you look at maybe deeper lots, we still want the same land area. This isn't about trying to put everyone in a cookie cutter box thing, but I think any one of those areas that you can try to cut some costs and efficiencies, I think from a city's perspective, we want these lots to be efficient in their utilities, because again, there's a long-term cost. I mean, we're going to be looking at Adams Street. There's that life cycle of just the infrastructure cost when placing it. The more we can make that more dense from a street linear footage, it's going to be more efficient for the city long-term also.
Thank you. I just wanted to point that out. It's another part of that equation when we talk about more economical homes that are built perhaps with lesser materials. There are other ways to keep costs down other than just doing that. So thank you.
Yeah. So jump back here. So I'm going to go through some examples of what a Carroll tax abatement could look like. There's some examples. You have the handouts now. If we just expanded our existing tax abatement and did it citywide or even within our existing area, a 5-year, 100% of the first $75,000, that would be $4,892, kind of using our current tax rates. So that'd be the tax abatement you would see here in Carroll. Now, if you said, no, we want more than that, and we want to do, and actually here, this looks at what the different value home, and I think also it recognizes taxing jurisdictions are getting some value right away. If you said, no, we're going to do 100% for the first 5 years, this would be, again, then what would be abated in taxes. So that's $650,000 home, which we've had a lot of those homes get built. It'd be $47,390 in tax abatement over 5 years.
That's a good spot to throw in. That was also recommended we consider a cap of approximately $500,000. Not that we have to,
yeah,
but it was suggested.
And I gave some examples of, earlier I talked about, well, what if we kind of feather it over? We're going to do the first $250,000, 100%, 75% on $250,000 to $500,000, and 50% for anything over a $500,000 home. So again, that $650,000 is going to receive $37,000 in tax abatement over 5 years. Now, the taxing jurisdictions are going to see about $10,000 over that same 5 years. So they're getting some benefit of with it coming on. Now, this is one option. We could go, and I think what got hit, this was one slide we showed, was we're going to do 50% for the first, or 100% on $250,000, 50% on that $250,000 to $500,000, and 0 over $500,000. And there's your $650,000. They're still getting $27,065 in tax abatement, but then the taxing jurisdictions are getting something too. So I think, the question came, I think the point too was also, does a individual that's going to build a $650,000 home really need tax abatement at that high level? That's a question that you certainly can look at and consider.
And Mike, this includes the home and the lot. I know some of the other examples excluded.
So this would exclude the lot because, again, that's value that's there. It's tax abatement works on the new value that gets added. So.
Well, and you mentioned the investment in infrastructure, street, sewer, et cetera. that some people may not realize that's the builders or the developer of the area who's footing that cost.
Yeah, it's not the city, absolutely, it's a good point.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people assume that the city puts the street, water, and sewer in, but that's not the case. Now, there's certainly, we've done we've set up 3 TIF district and development agreements since I've been here. Only one has kind of went through now, and that's down in Rolling Hills with the duplexes that are being constructed, where we are providing some dollars for the infrastructure improvements that were done. But that's one way we can do it.
And that was certainly a concern, was the sheer cost of the lot. And
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, as long as we're doing something to help out, we can't target it directly at the lot, correct, Mike?
To bring the lot cost down.
Right.
Once the lot's there, it's really difficult. Now, if you certainly want to use like local option sales tax or general fund dollars, we could buy down the lot. I think that goes back to the idea of we'll give an incentive for a homeowner to come and build. Again, we'll give you $5,000, $10,000 cash. Now, there's certainly a limitation of how much we can do. We have limited resources and funds. Now, I think there's a conversation to be had to say, do we talk with our major employers and say, hey, if we did a program like this, would you provide us some dollars to kind of help also? And maybe that helps leverage our dollars a little bit further, where we say, okay, the city's gonna put up $200,000 if it gets matched by local businesses. And if you do that, now you have $400,000 hopefully at the end of the day.
That was one of the contractors I think we talked to, Vern, about that. If the city put in money, some businesses put in money, the banks, and he laid out a spreadsheet and said, this is what my all of a sudden my $38,000 lot brought it down to 15.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden now you got a $15,000 lot. And maybe that's something that you look at for a younger contractor who doesn't have the finances to be able to afford to purchase the lot to put up the home type of thing.
Right. And as we spoke with them, with the bankers in the room particularly, that helps to cement their equity position a little bit for that new young.
And they're like, no way am I going to build a home. I can't afford to float all that. Their pockets just aren't deep enough anymore because the cost of everything is so much higher than what it used to be. So there's another problem.
Yep. And I think that is an issue. I think it is, and I think it's why you don't see a lot of spec homes get built in Carroll.
Yeah, they can't. The interest rate's low, and the Fed locked that for another year, but still just the cost of everything for them, they're gonna have to borrow that money because they don't have the pockets yet to do that. And that's why, two of the guys said, I'm not going into that market as long as remodeling is so strong, because I don't have the pockets for that.
Yep.
And that's just it, Laverne. And yeah, I think that's really important to point out. If we do have any young builders listening out there and you have some inkling or inclination towards that, we'd really like to see it. Can I throw you under the bus, Mike? Can they call you?
Absolutely.
Call City Hall, talk to Mr. Poggy Weaver, so he can help connect you with some of the local agencies, be it banks or whoever else, to help you get started, because they are interested in helping be a part of the solution at the financial institutions.
Absolutely. And actually, since we've had that conversation, I've reached out to every bank in town and we've talked about it, and they're all very interested. And I will tell you, they also have a different perspective too, or more interesting perspective than me, is they're talking to their clients who want to buy houses and they can't find houses either. And so, it's a pretty vicious cycle right now that's happening. Now, I would also say as much as we think maybe we're the only ones in the boat, I was talking to a builder in the Des Moines market last week, and we were talking a little bit about this and some of the issues we're facing. And he said, in the Des Moines metro area right now, between Perry and Pella, there are 200 homes on the market in Des Moines. So if you think we have a housing problem, that's way tighter yet. And so that's a real problem issue, I think, throughout the state is I think there's a real need for housing of all types, of all caliber, and no one's getting it. Just kind of close this out a little bit, issues. We talked about local builder capacity. We talked about the Manning project. I think that's a really good example of the American Classic Home. I know COVID, and by the way, this was a slide, COVID is an issue. Certainly we know that's problematic. We are seeing rising material costs. Now, what I would tell you both with COVID and rising material costs, if we go back and look at some of these communities and what is being constructed right now, Ankeny was up last, Des Moines was up last year, Pell was way up last year, Grinnell was the same. And so, yes, there are factors, but I think there's communities out there that have done a really good job to overcome that. And I think we have to realize that sometimes perspective, sometimes it's, while you may think it's more expensive, it's kind of is the norm of what's happening out there. So what now? I think kind of hit the highlights again. What's our end game? I think that's something we really need to talk about. I'm not looking for answers tonight, but I think as we go in the next few weeks, I think it's something we really should discuss is what's our end game? How many houses do we want to see in the community? What's the price point that we want to really see? Are there incentives that would really bring developers and others that would come to buy houses? What's the incentives and how do we encourage that price point? What's the housing mix? And do we look at incentives that really push that developer to do that housing mix? And then how quickly do we want to grow? And then how does that impact our schools as we look to grow? So I think those are kind of the highlights. That was the discussion we had Friday and a half ago now with the developers. I do think there is some work on the edges, and I think it really hasn't done a lot to kind of incentivize that market to where we want it to be. There is only so much we can do to incentivize that market, but I think the question that the council should consider is there a role, because the private development isn't occurring the way we really think it should or needs to be happening in Carroll. I guess that's where I'll stop for now and look for any questions or just a discussion on this topic.
One thing I think we're missing the boat on here a little bit, because you did that $324,000 home, Newton and Carroll, comparison. I just did some figuring here. After the abatements, the taxes compared to those two towns, it's 50% less in Carroll. Are we missing a little bit of the boat there, not promoting that our taxes are so much lower for the same comparable tone,
Oh, yeah.
It ranged from the scenarios you gave from a 36 to 50% difference.
And I think
you're talking a big difference there just in taxes in those two communities, even after the rebates or abatements.
Yeah. So the Newton's consolidated tax rate is $43.40, where our consolidated tax rate is $26.84.
So there's you're almost your 50%.
And I think we hear a lot about how Carroll taxes are so high. I think it's now every community has some differences. I'd like to maybe go back 10 years and look at Newton and when Maytag was in its heyday, what impacts happened there.
Yeah.
There may be a narrative that we're missing in that picture, but we really do have. I mean, you look at our comparable cities, we're the lowest consolidated tax rate.
Well, that's what I'm getting at is if we're going to promote these tax abatements, we should also promote our tax amount.
Yeah, I agree.
And that promotion's another part of the equation that we have to talk about here at council. I don't know how many hours you have left in your day, Mr. Bogey Weaver, but I'm guessing they're getting a little more limited. We don't have a person designated who does promotion of the city, do we?
We have lots of people that wear hats on that front.
all across different agencies such as the chamber and CADC and the city here, yes.
But even within our organization, the city organization, we have a lot of people that wear that hat. But, I do think it's one of those areas that we kind of struggle with.
Yeah, I've watched it be a struggle since I came on board, and it's something I think we need to give serious consideration to. And I've been taking a class recently through DMAC that the chamber helped to offer that works with promoting oneself on digital marketing, digital media, social media, and the like. And this stuff takes time. It takes persistence. You have to have constant messaging going out there to grow organic search results, the free ones that you get just because you have good content. There's a lot to it. Just wanted to put that out there.
Well, Austin, working on our new website, I
Exactly.
think that's a good first step.
It is for sure.
Showcase more than we're just a government.
You're right, Carroll, but what I fear could happen is we develop that beautiful website. We watch the city manager's report that gets posted every week and almost every week, and we look at the different content that's there. I just want to make sure we keep that content relevant and current, and that's constantly building so that we have a good pull through the internet to bring people to Carroll to see that we're talking about incentives here, to understand that we have two great schools in the community, to really pull that picture together and make sure they find us before they find the other community out there. But you're right, it's a great jumping off point.
I'm excited with the website.
Oh, yeah, I think it'll work out well.
It'll be this summer, but it'll be a while yet, but it'll be a good project.
Another stumbling block on this is I talked to some investors on stuff. And years ago, investors would get together and build homes, not even contractors, just people to have a return on their investment. And because of the cost of construction and everything now, that rate of return is so low that investors are not jumping into the housing market because there's other places to make more money for those people. That's another stumbling block we have.
I think that's where like some of those incentives come into play though.
Yeah,
So
that's exactly what you
know,
get.
yeah. Do we have another discussion about this in a month or so? Or do we assign?
I think we can. I think we do. I think we need to.
So we
in
can
fact.
keep this going?
But I
you
think
you give us this information and then it just doesn't go anywhere. I hate to see this continue to be dropped.
And I think there's some discussions that are also happening really outside the council. I think the discussion that happened a week and a half ago has spurred some interesting, and there may be a big announcement kind of coming out of that. I think it's kind of cool. But we can't announce it yet. There is, I know there's some, we talked about this private welcome package. I will tell you one business has already said that they would give basically $2,000 to anyone that builds a house in the city of Carroll. Now it's through a product and service they provide, but that's a pretty big incentive in my mind. And it's a product and service. It's not Amway products. It's a good product and service that everyone would have in their house. And so I think that's really, there's a lot of people, as we've talked with different individuals, absolutely we want to get behind it and push it. So I think there is a lot of eagerness to tackle this. I think there is some urgency, especially if we want something this construction season to talk about that sooner rather than later to move that. So it's something, we're planting the seeds tonight, but I really would say, let's talk about this and really kind of work together to think through. If you guys have questions or thoughts, please share those. Let's have those conversations and then let's bring it back. If you want it in 4 weeks, that'd be great.
Have you ever thought of having another meeting like we had, but more varieties of people and more of, a lot more people than what we had, I guess?
We can. I will tell you, this is the 4th time I've given this presentation in the last week and a half.
Was there a lot of dialogue in that?
Oh yeah, we've had lots of good dialogue. Okay. And I think across the board, there hasn't been one person that says, nope, we don't need more housing. It's been hands down, and then how do we get there? I mean, I was talking to the new CEO at New Hope Village, and just his frustrations of finding a house in Carroll.
So out of that, have you gotten any directions from those people on what to do, or is it just dialogue?
I think it's a big enough issue that I think it's, you know, I don't think anyone really knows that answer. I think we just got to throw a lot of stuff out
That's
there.
what I ran into too.
And really, and you know, I think we, if you were asking me a suggestion of courses, I would say, let's throw an incentive out there, try to get our locals to move it. It may not move anywhere, but I think we try to push it. If it doesn't move it, then I think we look at trying to go out and recruit builders in other communities to try to look at Carroll and come to Carroll. I think there's a lot of interest in that. You know, I've had conversations, like I said, I was talking to a Des Moines builder last week, and they absolutely would come here in a heartbeat. They just need really someone to reach out and say, you know, come, you're interested in us. So I think those are conversations that can be had, and I think push it. But there's trade-offs of taking that approach, obviously.
And I guess that's where I'm looking at what you had done for the tax abatement stuff. That's something that council has to take action on. And rather than waiting another year to get that, that's what I'm looking at. If we want to get something inoculated, you bring this back in another month. We've had time to, you know, look it over. I mean, with what you've done and putting the figures together, I think, and then making these presentations with all this information, that I think it's woke some people up to that fact. And I think just the, you know, listening to the meeting that we had a couple Fridays ago, and then some of the feedback that you've gotten where you've presented this, from what we've discussed, it's people are seeing it. Hey, there is a issue here, and it's time to get the ball rolling.
How do we, and I suspect in the presentations you've given, Mike, you might have gotten some good feedback on the answers to your what now questions, that end game of how many homes do we want, the price points, et cetera. Have you gathered some good feedback on that?
I would say no. I mean, I think that's an area we need to keep digging into. What I would say, though, is you go back and look at the housing study.
Mm-hmm.
It really talked about, again, it's every price point. And I think there was a lot of effort to really focus on maybe one or two very specific price points. But I think there's needs everywhere. And I think sometimes as we look at how do we build this one housing type, I think it maybe opens up some other price points. So, for example, I think there's a real need for senior housing, independent senior housing. Again, that's the duplexes, maybe even single family, small slab on grade homes that's in a homeowners association that has some services that people don't have to worry about mowing and snow removal. So you build that, people start moving into that. Well, that may free up a home that's $150,000.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that helps the whole overall housing market. So I think as we can think about those different price points, and I want to look at the Grinnell project, I think it was.
Well, you're pulling that up. One of the things I'm curious about is even here at a local level, could we perhaps go with a simple internet-based survey to send out to those professionals and some of the stakeholders that you've worked with and ask these questions of them? I can tell you all day long about equipment, no problem, you know, tractors, skid loaders, whatever. I know that stuff. I am not a dyed-in-the-wool expert on housing or housing finance. Could we send out something just to get some feedback from those folks? You know, how many homes are they looking for? What do they see as an optimal mix between the different types of housing? Or what might they recommend, just to try to help us use the expertise of our community to pull together a better picture to answer those broad questions?
I think you could probably do a couple of things. One, you could do the tax abatement type thing, like the graduated plan. After sitting there, you know, thinking about this for the last 2 weeks with what Adele and what was the problem with that one? And then now seeing that graduated plan, I think that makes more sense because it gives you an end game, if you will. You know, there's even that incentivizing, here's $10,000, let's get you started. I think we had that discussion. One contractor said 10, the developer said 20. You know, so I'm like, we need the contractor's the one who needs to get it done. If the developer doesn't have the contractor, what good's the 20? So I'm looking at the contractor going, that's probably the more the route because we got to incentivize them to start building the stuff
Well, that's
because
what
there's
I-
lots available.
That's what I'm trying to understand, because I can't even answer that first question of how many homes do we want? I don't have a set answer to that tonight. I couldn't answer that.
Well, that's one of the first questions there. I mean, I can just look at that meeting on Friday, there was 2 right there that we needed to have.
Yeah.
For employers. I mean, I'm looking at that going minimum of 5, if not 10, to get that ball rolling, to get that started, to get them going out there.
And one of the employers that was in the room said we need to hire 60 people today.
Yeah. So now you're looking at,
60 people.
yeah.
We're at what, 2.5% unemployment in Carroll County?
You do a five townhome complex like that, there you got 5 right there.
Mhm.
You put 4 or 5 of those buildings in, and boom, all of a sudden, there it is. I have a relative that lives in one of those up in Milford, and that thing's always full.
Well, then you pop that person into that unit. They live there for a year, they get cemented in the community, and 2 years later, now they finally got their time with the builder to get their $500,000 plus home built too.
And they're building equity in the townhome that they purchased.
Yes.
Yeah.
Carolyn, I think I stepped on you earlier and you were gonna say something.
No, I was just thinking about what they were saying. And, you know, we need employees. A lot of people commute from the outlying small towns. And they brought up, several of the realtors brought up, there's nothing for sale in Templeton.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing for sale in Breda. And I think, I can't remember if they said the same thing about Halber. But I know in Templeton, so, I mean, they can't even look outside of our city.
Somebody had 5 housing starts. Was that Breda? In that Tiefenthaler?
Breda had, so
5
in
starts.
CADC last week, Breda said they had 5 new housing starts this year. In the city
Yeah,
of
that's
Breda.
what it was, CEDC. That's what, yeah.
And we've had 0. So,
Those weren't spec homes, right?
I would not suspect they're spec homes. I could be wrong. I don't know.
The city has lots for sale on the west side, and the northwest side. And at first, all the building was being done on the east side with the, not spec houses, but custom. Now they're starting to sell the lots on the west side.
Well, that's been there for some time. too.
Yeah, it took them forever to get that jump started, yep.
So we'll bring it back in 2 meetings then.
That's fine. Because it's just, in the interest of time, we're starting to get, we got the closed session we got to finish yet too. So, all right, we'll do that. Let's see, I need a motion to go into closed session.
Hey, here, I'll practice, Mr. Cox.
Do we have the attorney on?
Yeah, do we have the attorney on?
He was there.
Attorneys are
Nope.
on.
He's there. Dave, are you there? You'll probably have to unmute your mic.
Yes, Mayor, I'm here.
Okay, we're gonna get ready to go, proceed to that closed session. And I believe, Councilman Kotz has a question for you. Oh,
Are we legal to enter into closed session?
I'm sorry, it's Clay Haley. Councilman.
Mr. Cox not running again, so I
Okay, all
want to try to practice.
right. Councilman
Yes, the motion
Haley,
is authorized to proceed.
Make a motion to go into closed session.
there's a motion
Second?
and a second. And we'll go ahead and vote to go into closed session, please.
Cox,
Yes.
Fleischner,
Yes.
Seaman,
Yes.
Dirk,
Yes.
Haley,
Yes.
Base.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Okay,
So what I will do is I'll put all of our current participants that are not part of the closed session in a waiting room in Zoom. And then YouTube will actually stop airing for a while. You'll just have to watch the city's channel, and it'll come back on once we enter on a closed session. So we'll have to give me about a minute to get that all set up.
That's fine. And you'll want to check to make sure. open session then? All right,
Yep.
ready? With that, then we'll have a meeting Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock. And I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. We'll go ahead and vote, please.
Base,
Yes.
Seaman,
Yes.
Fleshner,
Yes.
Dirk,
Yes.
Haley.
Yes.
Cox.
Yes.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.